Here is Clark, splashing home a three from way downtown. Some words with the Connecticut bench.
Nobody expected Caitlin Clark to turn the WNBA offseason into a viral roast tour, but one comment aimed at Sophie Cunningham cracked open a much bigger story. What looked like a joke was actually a glimpse into how power and loyalty collide behind the Indiana Fever's smile-heavy highlight reels. Caitlin Clark hammering Sophie Cunningham was never about cruelty, and it was never just about a mispronounced phrase either. It was about familiarity, comfort, and the kind of closeness that only forms inside locker rooms where pressure never shuts off and expectations never sleep. When Clark reposted Cunningham's now infamous fresh of breath air moment, it didn't feel random or lazy. It felt precise. It felt like something only someone who knows you deeply would dare to do in public, because the joke only works if the bond underneath it is unbreakable.
20-point lead. Caitlin Clark with a few words with Jason.
What made the moment explode online was not the humor itself, but the timing. The WNBA was deep in an offseason clouded by uncertainty, CBA negotiations, and quiet anxiety about where the league is actually heading. Into that tension stepped Clark, the most visible player in the sport, casually reminding everyone that she is not just a scorer or a ratings machine, but a cultural center of gravity. One repost, one caption, one inside joke, and suddenly the internet was debating power dynamics, favoritism, and who really runs the Fever's locker room. Sophie Cunningham's role in this story matters more than the joke suggests. She was not just another veteran added for depth. She arrived in Indiana with a reputation as an enforcer, a tone setter, and someone unafraid of confrontation. In Phoenix, she built her identity on toughness, edge, and emotional volatility. In Indiana, that edge softened into something else. She became protective, she became vocal, she became one of the loudest defenders of Caitlin Clark when opposing teams tested boundaries and officials swallowed whistles. That transformation did not happen quietly. It happened during moments when cameras were rolling and tempers were flaring. When Clark took contact that crossed the line, Cunningham stepped in without hesitation, absorbing fines, criticism, and attention that Clark herself never had to address publicly. That dynamic created a subtle hierarchy. Clark was the engine, Cunningham was the shield, and shields tend to take hits that stars are protected from. So when Clark teased Cunningham months later, it landed differently depending on where you stood. To casual fans, it was funny. To insiders, it was revealing. It showed who felt secure enough to laugh and who had already accepted their role in the ecosystem. Cunningham did not clap back defensively. She leaned into it. The Fever's official account leaned into it. Teammates leaned into it. That collective response said more than any press release could. But hold on and smash that subscribe button, hit the like, because beneath the humor sat a more uncomfortable truth. The Indiana Fever, for all their marketing polish and chemistry clips, are not built on equality. They are built around Caitlin Clark. Every roster moves, every substitution pattern, every media narrative orbits her presence. Sophie Cunningham's injury, which quietly ended her season in August with a torn MCL, exposed how fragile that balance actually was. Without her enforcer, without her emotional outlet, the Fever looked different. Still dangerous, still talented, but more exposed. The team fell one game short of the WNBA Finals, and the absence of both Clark and Cunningham during the postseason cast a strange shadow. It was a reminder that chemistry does not win championships when bodies break down. It also fueled speculation about whether Indiana would prioritize loyalty or flexibility moving forward. Cunningham entered free agency at the worst possible time, during a looming CBA overhaul that froze player movement and blurred timelines. Her podcast appearances only added fuel. When she hinted that Fever games felt more fun than anywhere else, it sounded affectionate on the surface. Underneath, it sounded like a player negotiating leverage with honesty rather than strategy. Saying you want to return is one thing. Admitting that the future is completely out of your hands is another. Cunningham made it clear that this offseason was not about choosing a destination, but waiting for the league itself to decide the rules of the game. That uncertainty is exactly why Clark's social media presence carries so much weight. When she jokes, it moves markets. When she reposts, it sends signals. Players players notice, agents notice, front offices notice. Clark does not need to speak on labor disputes or roster politics because her actions already do the talking. Her comfort with Cunningham suggests trust, but it also reinforces a hierarchy where proximity to Clark equals relevance. This dynamic is not new, but it has never been this visible. Previous eras, WNBA stars carried influence quietly. Today, Clark carries it loudly without ever raising her voice. Her brand is clean, controlled, and devastatingly effective. She does not attack, she does not complain, she does not need to. The league bends around her presence whether it wants to or not. Sophie Cunningham's role as both friend and foil makes her uniquely vulnerable in this ecosystem. She is popular enough to matter, but not untouchable enough to dictate terms. Her injury reminded teams that toughness has limits. Her free agency reminds fans that loyalty does not guarantee security, and her willingness to be publicly teased by the league's biggest star highlights a power imbalance that most players would never acknowledge openly. Yet the story refuses to settle into a villain narrative because Cunningham is not a victim here. She is self-aware. She understands her value both on and off the court. She knows that being associated with Clark amplifies her visibility in ways Phoenix never could. Her podcast appearances, her media comfort, and her willingness to joke about herself suggest a player adapting rather than resisting. In modern sports, relevance is currency, and Cunningham has learned how to stay in circulation. What makes the Clark-Cunningham dynamic fascinating is that it mirrors the league's broader transition. The WNBA is shifting from collective identity to star-driven momentum. That shift creates winners and casualties at the same time. Players who align themselves with stars gain exposure. Players who resist the orbit risk being left out of the conversation entirely. The Tres Leches trio with Lexi Hull symbolized that shift perfectly. It was branding disguised as friendship. It was chemistry repackaged as content. Fans loved it because it felt authentic, but authenticity itself has become a commodity. The Fever did not just win games last season, they won attention, and attention changes expectations in ways that are difficult to reverse. Clark hammering Cunningham online was funny because it felt human, but it was also a reminder that even humor follows power. Not everyone gets to joke publicly. Not everyone gets to be mocked affectionately without consequence. The difference lies in security, influence, and perceived indispensability. Clark has all three. Cunningham has one, maybe two, and that gap shapes everything. As the Fever prepare for another title push, with Clark expected back healthy and dominant, questions linger about who will still be standing beside her. Will Cunningham return as the same fearless enforcer, or will Indiana pivot toward younger, cheaper, more controllable pieces? Will loyalty matter more than flexibility in a league bracing for structural change? And how many players are willing to accept secondary roles in exchange for proximity to the spotlight? The offseason joke will fade, but the implications will not. Caitlin Clark has reached a point where even her smallest gestures carry meaning. Sophie Cunningham has reached a crossroads where humor masks uncertainty, and the WNBA is watching both, aware that this relationship reflects where the league is headed, whether anyone wants to admit it or not. This is not about roasting a teammate. It is about control, comfort, and the quiet reshaping of power. It is about how stars lead without speeches and how everyone else adjusts or disappears. And it is about a league learning in real time that influence does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it just laughs, reposts, and keeps moving. Was this just friendly fire between teammates? Or are we watching the real hierarchy of the WNBA take shape in plain sight? And when the jokes stop, who actually gets the last laugh? Let us know your views in the comments below.